Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Just want to make sure everything is broadcasting properly before I jump right in. We do record our trainings. They typically last about an hour and a half. You can make use of YouTube's chat feature to ask questions about a feature as I'm going over it, and I will try to address the question at that time. If I have to backtrack, I have to backtrack. That happens. Beyond that, let's go ahead and get started. This is our dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. You can also get there from the virtualpbx.com website. Just look for the blue bar across the top, and there'll be a login link there, and that will take you to this page. To log in, we need 3 pieces of information. The first is your email address. That's your unique identifier. We need your password, which should have been emailed to you. And then lastly, we need your account name, which is typically your company name. Now, if for some reason that information isn't working or you don't have the password, just above the sign-in bar here to the bottom right, there's a forgot your info link. You can click on that. We still need your email address. Then we need either the account name or a phone number on the account, right? This is a customer-facing phone number. You just click on reset password. This will send you an email with a link to change your password. It basically logs you in temporarily just so you can change your password, and it logs you back out. Then back on the login page where you enter your information, and you have the option here to click on Remember Me. One thing to keep in mind about the email address used for login, it should be in all lowercase letters. Right? If for some reason your browser capitalizes the first character of your email, you might want to change that to a lowercase and see if that will let you log in. That has come up in the past. Well, let's go ahead and get signed in. Now I'm using a test account, which I've logged into many, many times. So it's defaulting me here to the dashboard page, which gives me just a quick snapshot of my system. On your first time logging in, the system will actually take you to your account page. So I can get back there by clicking on my name up here at the top right. And here you see my user page. Again, main thing that I would probably change here is my password. Now, as assistant admin, I can also get to the account level where I would change things like the time zone. If you ever need to change your company name, you're actually going to need to email our billing team. That's billing@virtualpbx.com because they need to change your company name in several different places. So make sure everything syncs up properly. Now, this is a test account, so this is all the information I have. For your accounts, over on the left under user, there'll be a billing section. Now, the billing is currently going through an upgrade, or we're actually migrating to Stripe. So right now, I believe that takes you a link to the billing portal where you can adjust the email that invoices are being sent to. I expect that to expand as time goes on, but as of now, that's what it's limited to. So if you need to update like your payment information, you actually need to give us a call and contact our billing team. All right, so up here at the top, again, you can click on your name at any time, get back to your account page where you're most likely going to change your password. Now, for most of you, immediately to the right of your name, there'll be a D&D toggle for Do Not Disturb. Right? If you click on it, it's going to be white, and that means you're not accepting calls. Right? Calls basically going to your extension would go to your voicemail. Right? If you click it again, it'll be mostly black, and then you're accepting calls. The reason I don't have it is my user is part of an ACD queue, and those two features do not work well together. Next up, we have the little help icon, little question mark. You have these 3 options here. Chat with us opens up a chat window, the bottom right of your browser, and you can speak with one of our support team members. Online store, this opens up a new tab and takes you to store.virtualpbx.com. This is where you would order things like a VoIP phone or router, among other things. Learn more opens up a new tab and takes you to our support pages, right? So you can see the various guides we have for the various features. Now, this blank space can be occupied by an optional item, and that would be the web phone. So after you add a web phone to your user, or to any user really, under the help icon, usually the next time you log in, there'll be an option here to go to web phone, right? This would open up a new tab, take you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. You use your dash login information to log into the web phone, and it allows you to use Chrome or Firefox on a computer to make and receive calls. Right, so it's not supported on the mobile versions of Chrome or Firefox, only on the computer or desktop versions of those browsers. And then you need to have an internet connection. Next up, we have the menu icon. There we go. Right, 3 horizontal lines, sometimes referred to as a hamburger icon. This takes you to other dash features. We are primarily going to be here in the dashboard. That's going to be the vast majority of our training time, but we will touch on these other areas as we go through it. Some of them are plan specific, meaning you may have to be on a specific plan to have the feature. If you don't have that feature, that's probably plan related. And then we have the logout icon. Here in the center, I have 25 total users, right? These are people on my account who make and receive calls. Depending on your plan, adding users can increase your bill, so something to be aware of. Then I have total devices. I have 47 devices on my account. And I have a breakdown. First up is soft phone. This just means a software application that uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. This includes the VirtualPBX soft phone or anyone else's soft phone app you may be using. Then we have cell phone, right? Just add a cell phone number as a device, and we can send calls to that device. SIP phone, this is a physical VoIP phone, right? So it sits on your desk. Generally speaking, Ethernet cable plugs in, so it gets out to the internet. Typically needs power as well, right? But then uses your internet connection to make and receive calls. There are different types of VoIP phones on the market that use different protocols. So the ones that work with us are called SIP phones, right? SIP. Right? If your phone is not a SIP phone and cannot be made into one, it is not going to work with us. And then the last breakdown we have is for the web, or the last active category I have is the web phone, right? Which is that Chrome or Firefox device. Down here, I have unregistered devices. It is saying I have 2, and that is in relation to my VoIP phones, right? SIP phones. I don't know why they're registered, right? The system doesn't know why, right? It could be they're not plugged in, right? Someone's moving offices. It could be someone's having an internet outage at their location, or it could be that there's some sort of configuration issue going on, whether on the phone itself or maybe with the network. Total numbers, I have 33 numbers. Right, so your plan includes at least some amount of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. If you go over that, typically that's going to be an overage on a per number basis. If you just signed up with us, I suggest checking the pricing page. It will tell you there, although I believe it is $1.99 per phone number is the base amount. And then we have these breakdowns here. First up is assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned number, you're using it, right? Someone can dial it and expect to speak to someone or leave a voicemail, join a conference, or be sending a fax, right? Spare number counts towards your allotment. You're just not using it right now. Well, so let's say, for instance, you're having a Thanksgiving or Black Friday promotion, right? You get a number associated with it. Now that's over. You don't want to take calls on that. You just unassign that number to make it a spare number, and now people won't calling you about a promotion that's no longer valid. This other breakdown here, USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free is US Canada toll-free. So 800 number, 888, all the way down to 833. USDID just means a US local number. right? So if you have a number San Jose, California, would show up there, same as if a number, say in Miami, Florida. Conference bridges 7, that means I've enabled the ability to host or moderate a conference on 7 of my users. Going over here to the top right, my main number box here. So I have these 6 phone numbers. These numbers all behave the same way, right? They're all going to the same location. They're all going to, they're all going to play the same main greeting. Then we have your conference room number. You can have multiple conference room numbers if you want. They're all going to the same set of conference rooms. So up to you if you want multiple. The fax box number, you can only have the one main fax box number, and this is your inbound fax number. The company directory, this downloads a CSV file to your device. So you can see people's names, their extensions, and their primary devices. The soft phone directory, this is for use with the VirtualPBX, the desktop soft phone application. So for Mac OS or Windows, you would download this file, upload it to your VirtualPBX soft phone, and then you can see the status of your other staff members in relation to the VirtualPBX soft phone, right? So if, say, my coworker Michael and I both only use the soft phone, right, then I can see, oh, he's on a call or not. However, say my coworker Jeff has the VirtualPBX soft phone, but he also has a Yealing phone, right? I can only see if he's using his soft phone, right? If he happens to be on a call on his Yealing phone, I would not see it on my soft phone. Store discount code, just for being a Dash customer, you get a discount code for use in our online store. Right? That's store.virtualpbx.com. And then your account realm, this is used in a couple things. One, it's used to program a third-party soft phone. It's one of the 3 pieces of information you would need from us in order to get that application to work. The other thing it's used for is to send faxes out. So for Dash, you just need to send out via email, right? So you create an email like you normally do. In the to field, instead of putting, say, your cousin Bob's email address, you enter +, the number 1, area code and phone number you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then your account realm. Then you just need to attach a PDF or a TIFF file and click send, right? So the system looks at the to field, the from field, and then the attachment. It doesn't look at the subject line. It doesn't look at the body of the email. In fact, anything you type in there is not transmitted as part of your fax. And it will only send out one attachment. So you want to make sure you don't have any kind of signature file included. All right, up here at top, we have caller ID, or towards the top. This pull down, unfortunately, doesn't work on my streaming software, but this allows you to select any of your main numbers over here on the right to choose from. That becomes your default number, right? So like your VoIP phones by default would display this number as your outbound caller ID. The company caller ID name information is optional. It allows you to input up to 15 characters, including spaces and special characters in this box here to the right. And then you have the company emergency information. This wants a North American address. And then you click on Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, if you inputted information in the company caller ID name or CNAME field, that information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support CNAME. It takes them about 3 business days to update their servers. Right? That's not something we can control. That's purely up to them. And then what generally happens is when you make an outbound call from your VoIP phones, right? We send the phone number, right? The 4-way number I have here at the top. And we would then send, in this case, Atlas Park as part of your outbound caller ID. That is what we can control, right? Whoever you're calling, right, the receiving end, right, their carrier can choose to accept that information that we send and pass it through. They can instead choose to look up the number themselves from their own databases and use that information. or just not show up anything, right? And just show the number. Uh, that's not something we can control, right? We can't make other companies do this. The most problematic issue for CNAM is calling cell phones. The cell phone providers do not actively take part in CNAM. They typically want to charge their subscribers an additional monthly fee in order to have CNAM information show up on calls on their cell phones. Most people don't want to pay more to their cell phone companies, so that doesn't always come through. So those are the things to be aware of. Hold music. So Dash allows you to upload your own media files. It will playback .wav, .wav, .mp3, or .ogg files. You want to make sure they're recorded in mono, not in stereo, and that they're under 1 megabyte in size. You would just click upload here, find the relevant file by clicking browse, and then click the up arrow icon here. After finished uploading, you would click on save changes. You also have this pull down here, so you can select any media files that have already been added to the system. Now, music on hold on the system is defined as after a call has reached one of your staff members, right, one of your users, and they've answered the call on their VoIP phone, and they then press hold on their VoIP phone. That is when this media file will play. Now, hours is part of main number, so I'm just going to click on main number. We'll work our way down. Main company numbers, the first section here, it shows your main numbers. You can obviously have multiple. If you decide you no longer want to use a number as a main number, you would just click unassign next to it. In this case, it's saying, you want to remove the E911 information. And it will then be removed. Now, this is just removed from this area. It's not deleted from my account. So unassigning a number just moves it to become a spare number, meaning you can reuse the number somewhere else. Right, and I can do the same thing here for this 855 number. There we go. Now down here at the bottom, here's my option to add numbers to become a main number. Right, so I can add from spare numbers. So this is reusing any of my numbers, or I can add a number back in that I just unassigned. Right, you just click here on the checkbox in front of it, and then add selected. Likewise, by numbers, this is adding new numbers to your account. Right, toll free, you choose a toll free prefix you want to work with, and click on search. It's going to give you a list of numbers to work with. You can scroll down to add more. Any number you want to add, you just click on that little add button, moves it over to your cart, that little one there. You can add multiple at one time if you want to, but then you just click on by numbers. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this list of numbers is a dynamic list. So you're technically competing with people in real time. So you wouldn't want to add numbers to your cart and then walk away, right? Like your boss is calling you into a meeting, you'd want to click on buy before you go into that meeting. Right? So that way you make sure you added the number that you wanted, right? If you get pulled away into that meeting, come back like an hour later, the number might not actually be truly available. Local numbers, slightly different. You need to know the area code you want to work with, right? So we can do a search for 408, which is in San Jose. So you can see there's some numbers available, right? Now what can happen, I don't know if we have, yeah. So 415 is San Francisco, right? And you can get this message on any area code, including the toll-free area codes, right? And this is just saying there's no readily available phone numbers in this area code. With that, and so basically your option there is, and what I normally do is I look up the area code and I hope that there's an overlay. Right? An overlay just means that there's multiple area codes covering the same geographic area. So let's see. Oh, so it looks like the overlay for 415 is 628. So we go back to my search. and go to 628, do a search, and we'll see if there's anything available. And sure enough, there is. So we can add that number or add multiple again. Again, make sure you click on that. Other than that, it's the same process, right? We're just making sure the system is verifying the number was truly available. And then it's activating or adding it to the account. Not quite sure why it's taking so long this time around. So overlays exist for a lot of the major cities in North America. Uh, so for 415, right, was for San Francisco. It might have been the original Bay Area code, right? I know 408 was in that area, what have you. So for any major metropolitan area, it's worth looking up area codes for, let's say, like Los Angeles or Toronto, uh, and check to see if we have any of those nearby area codes or overlay area codes, and see if there's numbers available, right? Just because again, there's a finite number of phone numbers in a particular area code, so that's why overlays exist. All right. You see a gear icon next to any of these numbers, so you can update the caller ID, right? So you can update the CNAM information for that number. Also, you can turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAM information, which would then get transmitted to your staff members' phones. E911, you can set up the E911 address for each of your phone numbers, right? So they can each have a different address. This allows you then to assign the phone numbers to your VoIP phones. So your VoIP phones have a specific address associated with it just for emergency purposes, right? This becomes the information that we send to emergency services. Someone picks up a VoIP phone, dials 911, right? So you can assign it to specific phones, so that way your staff members who are working remotely are sending the correct address instead of sending it to like your corporate headquarters. Prepend is a VoIP phone feature. This allows you to add text in front of the caller ID information that is transmitted to your staff members' phones. It gives them a heads up about what the call might be about. So like if you're expanding to a new location, right, you can put that location's name. Right, so like if I put in new lock, right, if I do that, then when anyone calls this specific number, right, this 866 number, right, that means that the new LOC, right, gets added as part of the caller ID that gets transmitted to my staff members' phones, so they know that most likely the person calling is calling about the new location. All right, so once you have main numbers associated, then you can come down here to office hour strategy. You've got either a 24-hour open office, right? So you're open 24/7, or you can set up your custom office hours. If you choose custom office hours, put a check mark for each day of the week that you're open, and then select your open hours in these boxes here to the right in 24-hour or military time. You also have the option here to say that your system is closed for lunch, right? You're basically saying, hey, everyone go to lunch at the same time. All right, you set your lunch hours again in that 24-hour or military time, and then you click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if you're closed for holidays, put a check mark here. Then over here to the right, you have the option to add holidays. You've got single day, date range, and advanced. Single day, right? Each one of those creates a new row, right? So you give it a name, right? So like I have here for New Year's Eve, I select the month and the date. I click on Save Changes, right? Date range, you can do like I have down here for Christmas break, right? Give a name, start date, end date, save changes. Now, there's no year indicator. So as a precaution, we recommend that you do not include a date range that has New Year's Eve and New Year's Day together, right? So you have a date range that ends on New Year's Eve and a new date range that starts on New Year's Day. That shouldn't be an issue. But again, that's just a precaution. Advanced is like I have up here for this first Thanksgiving entry, right? I gave it a name. I chose the month, the which week, right? First through fifth or last, and then the day of the week, right? And then save changes. Then we have incoming call handling. So this is how your system is going to handle calls on your main numbers. Right? So those 5, 6 numbers I have up here. And then I have these sub tabs. So how am I handling calls during my open hours, during my lunch hours, my after hours, and my holidays. Now, these first 3 options will always show up for you, right? The 4th option only shows up under a couple of circumstances. Those being if you have an advanced call flow set up for you, either by our services team or because of another feature, or if you have multiple auto attendants on your account and you made one or more of those attendants available in main menu, that's when this would show up. Otherwise, these 3 would be here. All right, so calls come in and they're going to my virtual receptionist. This is a link. If you click on it, it's going to open up a big old box. On the left, you have your main menu. This is where you give your customers options to press on their phone, right? So you would click on Add Route. Oops. Right here, creates a new row. The first pull down, you have 0 through 9, as well as the star key and the default action. And then the second pull down is where does that key go, right? So up here, right, I have these options here going to queues right off the bat, but Smart PBX directory or tile by name directory, user directory, whatever you want to call it. It's all interchangeable. Users, that means your calls are going to a specific person, right? If that person doesn't pick up, then it goes to their voicemail box. Call queues, again, if you're making use of this feature, call queues have an upgrade fee associated with them per queue. It has some advanced routing options. Groups are an included feature, typically for departments of only a few basic routing options. Then we have devices. That means you're having the menu option go to a specific phone. The downside there is if that phone doesn't have built-in voicemail, right, the caller just keeps ringing until they hang up or someone picks up. And then you have also the option to go to a voicemail box, right? So press 0 to leave a voicemail. Very common. You can also have a media file play. This would be like press a menu option to hear our hours of operation or directions. However, once the media file stops playing, the call is ended. And then lastly, we have these advanced call flows. This would be for things like you have submenuing, right? Plus 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, where each of those have their own greetings and then more menu options, as well as DISA or anything else that was custom created for you. Over here on the right, greetings, right? This is where you tell the inbound caller, thank you for calling. You typically give your company name or organization name, and then you give them instructions, right? What to press, right? 0 to speak to our sales team, 1 to speak to, or 1 to leave a message, right? 2 to speak to our support team, etc. Now, text-to-speech, this allows you to type in a greeting, click update, save, and save changes. The system will read it back to the inbound caller. So it's a computerized or robotic voice. There's no charge for this. The text-to-speech greeting is limited to 250 characters, not counting spaces, but not words, right? So characters, not actual individual letters. You can sometimes go over that. I've had greetings work at like 300, but 250 has worked consistently. The system uses a generic name for your text-to-speech greetings. So since we're in our open hours and on my main menu, in this case, my text-to-speech greeting is main open hours menu TTS. right? If I come back in here right now and I edit this, right? So I add some more text, for instance, right? I click update, save, and save changes. Now I'm gonna have two files that say main open hours menu TTS. And just by looking at the names, I'm not gonna know the difference. And this would show up in some of the pull down. So what I suggest, if you're gonna make use of text-to-speech greetings, right? When you create one, when you're done, on the left, we'll get over to the greetings tab, go there, find the file, rename it, right? Name it something like main greeting one, or voicemail option one, whatever you want to call it, just so something that you can identify what it is relatively easily. You can upload your own file, right? Just click on choose file. You can enter a name here for the file itself. .wave, .mp3, .ogg, recorded in mono, under 1 megabyte. Just click update and then save and save changes. Choose from an existing recording. You can see the main hours, open hours menu TTS. This pull down shows all your media files, hold music files, voicemail greetings, main greetings. That's why you want names that you can parse what they are fairly easily. You can record it over the phone. Now, by default, when the system wants you to record it over the phone, or it says pick a phone registered on this account, that means pick up a VoIP phone registered on this account. Now, if you don't happen to have a VoIP phone, and let's say you just want to call in from your cell phone, or you got that friend with the good radio voice, then under our settings, this one here, allow outside recording, you want to turn this on. This turns on the ability to call in from a cell phone or a landline and record a new main greeting over the phone, right? If I leave this off, that means you can only do so from a VoIP phone. Now, when you call in, you still need the PIN number. This PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So my open hours, 9 to 5. And so if I call in, so like let's say my friend with a radio voice calls in at 8 p.m., this PIN number won't work because it's only good for my open hours. Now, if I change my hours for that day that my friend's calling in to be, say, like 9 p.m., right, then it would still work. Now, if you just signed up with us, when you first call your main number, you're going to get a message saying that the greeting for this menu has not been created yet. It then prompts you for the PIN number. If you already have a greeting in place, let's say you start off with text-to-speech greeting, you got some feedback from your customers that they didn't like it, right, or it threw them off or whatever. You can still call in, right? You'll hear that text-to-speech greeting. You can still enter the PIN number. The system will recognize it and then switch over, basically, and walk you through recording a main greeting over the phone. You record, you hit save the file. It doesn't give you a chance to rename the file. So whatever greeting was in place, right? Greeting A is playing. You called in, enter the PIN, recorded. The content, the original content for greeting A is gone, right? You just overwrote it with the new content. That can be a little bit problematic because sometimes people get rushed around Christmas time to change their greeting. So something to be aware of. Professional recording services. When you click order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings, which is another company we've partnered with. They have like 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from, different versions of English, French, and Spanish. They have different bundles and pricing. I believe they've started their holiday sale, so now is a good time to go to them and get a new greeting. They deliver typically via email, and then you would just upload your file. All right, settings. Number of retries on misdial. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. Right, so I have it set to 0, meaning they can't make any mistakes. They get one chance. Normally, for most accounts, I say it's usually 1 or 2. Right, so caller comes in and they press 7, right? Not a valid menu option on my left-hand side there. It's not an extension number. Then the greeting would play again, right? It gives that customer a second chance. And in this case, since I just changed it to 2, they'd get 3 chances to get in or hit a valid entry. Dialing timeout. default on this is 10, and that's how much time the system waits for a second button press, right? So that inbound caller presses 7, the system waits for 10 seconds. It says, oh, you meant 7. Well, it's not a menu option, not an extension. So then the main greeting will play. I usually recommend taking this down to 5, possibly less, depending on your menu options, just to make it so it's less of a gap, right? Sometimes, pressing a button and then waiting for a long time, people might get unnerved or might start pressing extra buttons and then causing other problems. All right, we already covered allow outside recording. So here, allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on. And that just means when the inbound caller gets to your virtual receptionist, they can enter the extension number if they know it, right? And the system will accept it and then transfer the call to a valid extension. If I turn this off, that means my inbound caller can only use my menu options. If they enter an extension number, the system will treat it as an invalid entry, replay the greeting, and tell them to go again. And then we have this here, suppress the playing of invalid entry. So when a caller calls in and they keep pressing the wrong option, after the final retry attempt, the system will say, we did not recognize your entry, and then does one of two things. If you have a default action in place, right? So okay, right here, this last one I just added, then the system will send the caller to that default action location. Right? In this case, the Smart PBX directory. If I click on the little X here and remove that, if I don't have a default action, then the system will say goodbye and end the call. Right? It'll still say we did not recognize your entry. So if you don't want that message to play, then you would turn this on, right? So because you're turning on suppressing of that message. Any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you need to click Save here, and then you need to click Save Changes over here under Incoming Call Handling, right? So you're clicking Save twice. Now, lunch, right? Again, just a different time of day. In this case, this is my live operator answer option. So calls are coming in, and they're first being offered to my ring group that I've labeled front desk. So it's going to ring those group members. If no one picks up, then the caller gets sent to my virtual receptionist for my lunch hours. Right. So here I have a different menu set up. I have probably a different greeting, right? Because you probably would have a different greeting for your lunch hours versus your open hours. And you can have the same settings or different settings down below. After hours, again, similar concept here as I have calls going here to, again, my front desk group, but my virtual receptionist, again, slightly different menu option. Now, this pull down, right, you can select, I don't know why you would select directory. Typically, you select either a user, a group, or a queue, right? Groups and queues, technically, you're offering it to multiple people, right? So more people have a chance to answer. And then you would go to the virtual receptionist. You could do something like your media file or a specific phone, right? Specific device. I don't recommend the media file just because you're going to have two greetings play back to back, and that might throw people off. And then holidays, here I have the option, call comes in, I'm skipping everything and sending it straight to this particular voicemail box. Now this pull down, I can still select users, groups, queues, etc., as well as like a device or even a media file, right? But then in the second pull down, I can select the specific voicemail box I want the message to be left at. Then I would click on Save Changes. This fourth option is if you're making use of advanced call flows, right? So instead of having calls your main number go to your normal virtual receptionist, instead you're sending it to an alternate attendant. Not used very often. All right, main conference number, you got multiple conference numbers, right? So you have the option to add from spare or buy new. You can also do a custom greeting, right? You click enable, it's text to speech. So still 250 characters. Even if you leave this disabled, right, the system says welcome to the conference and then asks the inbound caller to add the conference room number and then the PIN number. Main fax box number, you can only have just the one, which is why I no longer have the option to add from spare by new. And then you have the option here to edit the fax box. The first field up here, right, inbound notification email. This is designed to put an email address. That email address gets an email every time a fax comes through saying, hey, you've had a successful fax. Here's the date, the time, phone numbers involved. If someone dials your main fax box number and hangs up, right, let's say they called from their cell phone, heard fax tones, and hung up like most people would, this email address still gets an email saying there was a failed inbound fax attempt. Right now, hopefully in the body of the email, right, it gives you the details of the call. If the caller ID says something like wireless caller, you can probably assume it was a misdial. Right. You can also look up this call, any failed fax attempts in the call log. Anything under 45 seconds will not have even sent a page. Typically, that means if it's from a number you recognize or that you were expecting a fax from, you want to reach out to them to see if they have any details on what happened, or just to tell them to try again. The email permissions, this is for outbound faxing. This is designed to put your domain here. And that way anyone at your company can send a fax out without having to be a Dash user. And then you would click on Save Changes. All right, auto attendance. This is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create secondary auto attendance. The most common use cases we encounter are for people who want to do submenuing, right? So one for English, two for Spanish. Each of those has their own greeting in their appropriate language, and then the menu options go to people who speak the relevant language. The other use case we have is for people who have multiple small businesses, each of those businesses having their own main numbers and their own main greetings, but they have the same staff people answering calls for these multiple businesses, or they simply just want them on the same account just to keep their invoice life in order, right? One less invoice by having them on the same account. So up at the top here, you click on Add Attendant. You give it a name and then an extension number, right? The extension number, typically just for your staff members' purposes. Your customers would never need to know that. Then you click on Create Attendant. They show up here in this list. When you click on the name, you have this first option here is it defaults to say unavailable in main menu. And that means it's designed to be a standalone attendant. Right? If, whoops, you click on it, now it says available in main menu, right? So now it becomes an option in my main menu, right? So it's a sub-menu option. That's why it would show up as a fourth option under my virtual receptionist, or the incoming call handling, excuse me. You also have the option to delete. Right? Any changes, you would click on Save Changes. Attendants can have their own phone numbers, right? You can buy new or add from spare. And then here under the wrench icon, under Settings, you see here you have open hours, lunch hours, after hours, and holidays, right? So these are times that we already set up under your main number, right? So your secondary attendants are going to have the same hours of operation as your primary. If you have multiple businesses and some are 24/7 and some are only 9 to 5, then you'd want to talk to our account services team to see if it's viable for them to be on the same account or if you need to have multiple accounts. And then beyond that here, right, you only have the option for the virtual receptionist. So anyone who's calling this number, they're going to hear a greeting, they're going to hear menu options to navigate through the system. Oh, and because your attendants have extensions, your staff members can transfer callers to these extension numbers, right? So the callers will hear the appropriate greeting. The Devices tab shows all your devices on the account. Black means you've turned it off. Red means it's unregistered. Green means it's registered, so we can send calls to it. Up here at the top, you can add devices. First up, we have SIP phone. This is that physical VoIP phone, sits on someone's desk, has an Ethernet cable. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Right? Some have a lot of models. Some have a lot less. You just need to find the make and model of the phone you're working with. And then first up, you need to give it a name, right? Bob's phone or break room phone, right? That kind of thing. I would avoid using things like phone A or phone 1 just because it's not as helpful down the road, right? Whereas you put the person's name, you can say, oh, okay, this is the right person. I know where they're sitting, kind of thing. MAC address, this is unique for each device, right? It's going to be a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone's plugged in, usually under its status or basic settings, you can find the MAC address there. You would enter that information here and then click on create device. Right. After device is created, you'd find it here. You'd click on the little wrench icon, go to advanced, select miscellaneous, and then click on unlock across from allow reprovisioning, right? And then click on save changes. After that, the only thing you have to do in the dashboard is go to users on the left and assign that device to the user. However, you need to access that phone's web user interface, right, the web UI, and you need to give it a URL. Basically, you're telling the phone, hey, go here to get your config file. It's under the auto provisioning tab. The phone will contact that URL, download its file, reboot a couple of times, and then show up as a registered device or green. For the specifics of that, under our support pages, you're going to want to go for or look for the auto provisioning phones document. It's going to have screenshots for these various manufacturers, as well as a proper syntax for that URL. In some cases, some other settings to double check, right? But they have, again, screenshots, step-by-step instructions, makes it a lot easier. You can also add devices directly to the user, which is what I tend to prefer. A cell phone or landline, give it a name, enter the phone number, right? +1, area code and phone number, no parentheses, dashes, or spaces. So I'm going to go down to here. Right, so here, right, we've named it demo device, and I've hit the +1. Here's the area code and phone number, and then I clicked on create device. Now, this is a standard or default setting for a cell phone or landline on the system. So when a call comes in the dash and we reach out to a cell phone or landline, first thing to know is that becomes an endpoint, right? The cell phone user or the landline user, they're not going to be able to transfer that call to anyone else on your system, right? So they have to handle the call or tell the inbound caller they have to call back in. In terms of how the system handles calls to this device, right? Call comes in, rings your cell phone, right? You pick up, you're going to hear a message saying, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. When you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take the call, which is great if it's actually going to someone's cell phone because they can make that decision. If, however, let's say you contracted with an answering service to handle your after-hours calls, they gave you a phone number saying, just send your after-hours calls to this phone number, and we'll handle it. So you add it as a cell phone or landline. That automated answering service, right, doesn't know how to press 1. Probably can't because it's probably just a computer. So what you would want to do is come back here in your dash account and put a check mark in front of allow use of cell phone's voicemail. What that does is now when we send the call to that phone number, when we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call, right? No need to press 1. There's no message about pressing 1, right? Then your automated answer service could then take care of the call and you get the message later or the next business day. Now, if this is your actual cell phone and you have it set up like this, where you have it checked for allow use of cell phone's voicemail, right? If you don't answer your call to your cell phone and your cell phone voicemail picks up, right, that's still a pickup tone. So we connect the inbound caller to your personal cell phone's voicemail. Some people want that, some people don't. The other thing to keep in mind is this one here, keep a regional caller ID. So customer Mary calls into your system, reaches out to your cell phone. On your cell phone, you see customer Mary's phone number. If you don't recognize it, you're like, I'm tired of these auto warranty calls or any political calls you might still be getting. So you let the call go to voicemail. Maybe you're able to reconnect with Mary, maybe not. If instead you uncheck this on your cell phone device, instead of seeing customer Mary's phone number, you would see your main company phone number. Go back to the dashboard here. Right? So whatever number you selected as your company caller ID number, that's the phone number that would show up on your cell phone. Right? So hopefully you would be able to recognize your main number, say, oh, this is a work call, let me handle it, assuming it's safe to do so. All right, soft phone. On the devices page, adding a soft phone will only allow you to add a third-party soft phone, meaning you're using someone else's soft phone application. If you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone, you need to add that as a device on the user tab specifically. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. So for adding a third-party soft phone, right, you give it a name, right, Bob's phone. Then you need to copy and paste the SIP username. Click on the SIP password box so you can copy and paste that, and then copy and paste the realm. Those are the three pieces of information you would need to program or provision that third-party soft phone application, or even to set up a third-party VoIP phone, right? It didn't show up under that SIP phone list. And then you click on create device. You would still then need to add it to a user. One thing to also know, you can click on the wrench icon here for devices. For the most part, for audio, if it's just software, right? So it's an actual soft phone application, you want to use Opus. Right? If we come down here to this physical phone for Cisco, for audio, you want to have G711A and G711U. Also, for every VoIP device, you have the emergency caller ID, right? So you can select the phone number, and then whatever address you have associated with that phone number, that is what is used whenever that phone dials 911. All right, greetings. This is your greetings manager. It shows all your media files, right? Hold music, main greetings, voicemail greetings. Right, you'll see the name, and then you'll see the source, right? Upload means you uploaded the file. TTS, text to speech. And recording means you recorded it over the phone. You have the option here to play it back right within your browser. Right, that's what this column is for. If for some reason that doesn't work, then right here you can download the file to your device and try to use a different media player to play that file. Got the little wrench icon here, so you can change the name or completely remove the device or the greeting, excuse me. Up here at the top, this is where you can add new files, right? You give it a name, find the file on your computer by clicking browse, click create device, or sorry, click greeting. It will then upload it and add it here. Now, this page doesn't tell you where you're using these files. It doesn't allow you to assign it. It just allows you to see which ones you have and change the names or remove them. Groups, also referred to as ring groups or hunt groups, right? Departments, right? Group of people. Up here at the top, you click on add group. You give it a name and an extension number. And then you would click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group. And then you would click on create group. Once a group is created, you can click on its name. Right? You can always change the name at any time. Right? And then you have the group call attempts. This is how many times the system will offer calls to the group members, assuming they didn't pick up the first time. Little arrows here to the right where you can increase or decrease it as you see fit. You also have the option to delete the group completely. And click on Save Changes. To the right of the group's name, you have the members box. You can click on that. And it shows you the members who are assigned to the group and how calls are being offered to them. This setup is referred to as blast ringing or ring all, right? So it's ringing everybody at the same time. In terms of how groups work, right? So call comes in, and if Bob has multiple devices, right, all of his devices will ring as soon as he's getting a call from the group. There's a user feature called Follow Me, which allows you to choose the ring order of your devices. A call from the group ignores that feature, just rings them all, doesn't matter. Now, up here along the top, You've got timestamps, right? You can adjust this last one here. The default for new group is 120 seconds, right? 2 minutes. You can click distribute. So now calls in the group will always ring in this order, right? So Bob is always first, then Aaron, then Peter, etc. Right? And a call into a group doesn't skip anybody, right? So call comes in, right? Call number 1, Bob answers it. He's helping the customer. Call number 2 comes in. It's still going to be offered to Bob initially, right? For 24 seconds. At 24 seconds, then it's going to go to Aaron, right? So then Aaron can finally pick up and answer the call, right? If it happen to be a busy day or Aaron and Bob both have like complicated calls, right? That third call that comes in, it's got to wait 48 seconds before Peter has a chance to answer the call. So in that instance, maybe you would consider adjusting these sliders a little bit more, right? So there's more overlap or less time between, when someone's, before one of your staff members can answer calls when it's busy. Down here at the bottom, you can add a new user to your group. Right, I can click distribute again. Now, if I want, I can change the order, right? I click and drag, and let's say Bob's got a big project, so I want him at the bottom, do something like that. Now, right now, the order hasn't changed because Bob is still at 0 seconds. But if I click distribute, now Jan starts at 0, right? And Bob's at the end. Remove, right? Removes a user from the group, right? Because they're no longer part of that team, for example. And any changes you make, you click on Save Changes. Right. Groups have to have an extension number. You can choose to have a group have its own phone number. Right? You would add from spare or buy new, like we have done up here and on these other two. Now, when a group has its own phone number like this, right, it doesn't have hours of operation, right? Because it's not a main number, it's not an auto attendant number. So that means if it doesn't have hours of operation, it's available 24/7. So if you have staff members who have personal cell phones as devices that are in this group, right, they could technically get a call at 2 in the morning. So something to be aware of. And then we have group features. First up is ringback. So when a call comes into a group and offered to your group members, right, their phones start to ring. That ringing sound is then sent back through the system back to your inbound caller, right, ringback. If you don't want that ringing sound to come back to your inbound caller, you can choose to enable the ringback setting and then upload an MP3 .ogg or .wav file and have that play back instead, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. One thing to keep in mind is if for some reason, like say you're offering calls in order, right? So Bob, Aaron, John, etc. Then if for some reason when we offer calls to Bob and his phone doesn't ring, right? Instead we get busy tone for whatever reasons, right? That's not a ringing sound. So the system doesn't replace it. Instead, the inbound caller just gets silence until the next call is offered to the next person or device. So that's another reason why you would want some overlap among your staff members. Next action, to me, this is the most important feature, is if no one answers, what do you want the system to do with the call? You have this pull down, right? So you can send callers back to your main menu, back to, you can send it to its second group. You can send it to a call queue, a specific user, voicemail box, etc. Allow call forward. If you enable this, that means your group users can make use of call forwarding, right? So they're not at their normal phone. They can make use of call forwarding to send it to a secondary device. Obviously, if users have multiple devices, they probably don't need allow call forward enabled. Caller ID prepend. This is for your VoIP phone users. When you enable it, you can enter either text or numbers that you want to show up as part of the caller ID information that shows up on your staff members' phones. The idea here is, again, to give your staff members a heads up about what the call might be about. And then you would click on Save Changes. All right, numbers. This takes you to your numbers tab and starts off with your numbers in use, right? It shows all your numbers and where they're assigned. Right? You can't unassign them here. You can't assign numbers here. You can click on the little gear icon for each of the numbers, right? So you can update the caller ID, E911, or PPEN for any number. Spare numbers tab shows the numbers you're not currently using. This is where you would go to delete a phone number from your account. So for instance, let's say I want to get rid of 2 numbers. I click on a little box in front of them, and now up here, I have the option to delete. So it's basically offering, are you confirming the deletion? And they've now been removed from my account. All right, by numbers, this allows you to add local toll-free numbers directly to your spare numbers page, right? So then you can assign them to where you need them to be later. Port, this starts the port process. That just means you're moving a phone number from one carrier to another, i.e. like from Comcast to VirtualPBX. Now, in terms of porting, oops, here we go. All right, you just need to give it a name, choose local or toll-free. Then the system asks you to upload a copy of your bill. The bill should be within 30 days. After that, the system will ask you for the phone numbers you're going to port, the address associated with those phone numbers. Right? Should typically match what's on your bill from the current carrier. It will ask you for the BTN, which is the billing telephone number. So if you're only porting the one number, the BTN is that phone number. If you're porting multiple phone numbers, you probably want to double check that with your current carrier to make sure you have the right information. It then gives you a chance to download a blank letter of agency or LOA, as well as to upload a completed and signed LOA. The LOA information, right? It's like the company name and address that should match, which is what your current carrier has on file for you. It does need to be signed. Right now, that can be a digital signature, but you don't want to simply just type your name twice or print your name twice, etc. Right? It should the second one should definitely look like a signature. And then we'll ask you, for some information, like your email address, your preferred port-in date. That date should be in the future. Right? It does typically take some time for numbers to port. And then there's a couple check boxes you need to check, and then you submit the port request. Once that's completed, you should get an automated email saying, we've received your port request. Ideally, by the next business day, you should get a second email from the porting team. That lets you know people have actually looked at the documents and have double checked it. They typically will email you information about the port, right? What to expect. If there's any problem with that, like let's say your LOA wasn't signed, right? They'll say, hey, this wasn't signed. We need to get that corrected before we can submit. Now, generally speaking, toll-free numbers take about 3 to 5 business days to port if everything is correct. Local numbers average 2 to 3 weeks. If we get a rejection, we always double check to make sure there's not been a typo or like if there's alternate information, right? Let's say there's 2 different addresses between all the documents. We'll try the second address. If all of that checks out, still getting an error, then we let you know saying, hey, we got this error. You probably need to confirm this with your current carrier to find out what the correct information is to port out. Users. This shows your users on the account. Up here at the top is where you would add a user, and you just basically fill out the form. The main thing to remember, the email address used for login is unique to each user, right? You cannot reuse email addresses. You create the password for the new user. You can adjust the extension number. Now, by default, the system will want to create a voicemail box for the user, and we recommend leaving that way. Here you have the option to include in the user directory. You can change your mind later. Here is the option to send emails to an alternate address. So if the system needs to communicate with the user, right, it uses the email address used for login. Right? That's where it would send voicemail notifications, password resets. If you want to use that information to go to a different email address, right, you would click a check mark here and enter that different address here. Again, you can change that later. And then you have the options to send credentials to the user, right, i.e., so they get an email saying, hey, welcome to Dash. Here's your Dash login information. Create user if you only need to add one, create user and add another if you need to add multiple. On the users page, right, people with the little blue suit icon, they are system admins. The little gray people icon, that means they're just a standard user, right? So system admins can do everything we've been talking about today. Once a user is created, you can click on their name, right? You can change their name. You can change their credentials, right? So email and password. This is also where you can send them the password reset email. Here would be where you change their voicemail box PIN number. Here's send to an alternate address. Here's to be in the user directory. This pull down allows you to change a user into an admin or an admin into a user. This pull down allows you to change the time zone, right? So the voicemail timestamps are correct for the user. Little flag icon here. This pull down allows you to change the display language, right? English, French, German, or Russian. Dialing timeout, the default is 20 seconds. This is grayed out on this user because they have the follow me feature enabled. Okay, my mouse is really acting up today. Extensions, right? Users are going to have need an extension, at least one. Right? You can have multiple if you want them to. You can have users have their own phone numbers if you want them to. Just like in groups, right? This is not a main number or an auto attendant number. So this phone number can ring 24 hours a day. Yeah, let's see here. So under the devices box here, right, that's where you would add devices. Seeing if they'll allow me to add a soft phone here. So here, right, it defaults to starting you off as using a third-party application. If you click on this little box here, it'll say use VirtualPBX application. Now, this warning message is saying that the email address that this user has already has a VirtualPBX soft phone associated with it. So it's not going to allow me to create one right now. However, if that wasn't the case, right, I would have clicked on this where it says use third-party application, given it a device name, clicked on create device, and then clicked on save changes. And then this user would get an email saying, you know, your VirtualPBX soft phone is ready. Here's your username and password, as well as download links to download the app. Beyond that, it's adding devices here is relatively straightforward, as or the same as on the devices page. The only other device I strongly recommend adding directly to the user is the web phone. Since the web phone uses your Dash login information, it needs to be associated with a user to be workable. Right? Whereas, like, let's say you're adding a Yealink phone, even if you don't assign a Yealink phone to a user, right, it could still make an outbound call. Whereas a web phone would not be usable because you have to log in first. All right, user features. First up, caller ID number. This only works on users that have their own phone number. When you turn it on, you select one of their phone numbers, and then you click on Save Changes. The phone number you select for them, that becomes their default outbound caller ID for their VoIP phones instead of your main company number. Right, so good for like salespeople, so they can call prospect, and the prospects can call them back directly instead of having to go through your virtual receptionist. The virtual text application, this is a new feature. When you enable it, use the phone number on the account. It should be a main number, auto attendant number, excuse me, or a phone number assigned directly to the user. You click on Save Changes. The user will then get an email welcoming them to the virtual text. VirtualText.app is a website. There's also a virtual text app that you can download to your phone. You could use either to text customers You can also share numbers on virtual text, so that allows you to have multiple staff members keep an eye on your main number chats or texts, right? So that way your customers are always being responded to. So yeah, it's possible that your staff members can have 3 logins, right? One for the Dash login, one for their soft phone app, one for virtual text. Voicemail box. This is a fairly default setup. Transcriptions, I believe, still technically a plan-specific feature. And all it is if you enable it, the system listens to the voicemail message and tries to type it out in the voicemail notification email. Right? It does that to the best of its ability. If people are not speaking into their microphones or their microphones are picking up a lot of background noise, that's obviously going to impact the accuracy of the transcription. By default, the system will automatically email the user when they have a voicemail, right? It'll have the date, the time, phone numbers involved, and then an MP3 attachment to listen to the voicemail message. Voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and will not accept any more. If your staff is good about calling in and listening to their voicemails over the phone and deleting them that way, or using the user portal to delete their messages, right? Not a big deal. If for some reason people are not good about that, then you have this option here, which is to delete the voicemail after we've sent the email out, right? So voicemail gets left, we send an email to the user with the call information as well as the MP3 file, and then we delete that voicemail from their voicemail box. So that way their voicemail box cannot become full. The limitation there is that means your user can only ever check voicemail via email. So if for some reason they're not getting their emails, they may lose voicemail messages. Follow me for users with multiple devices, right? This is like we just saw in groups, right? You can choose how much time you're being offered the calls. You can have sliders. You can change the order, click distribute. Now, when you first enable the feature, let's disable this real quick. All right, we'll enable it. It starts off like this because you have to tell the system which devices you want to make use of. You uncheck them, and then you have sliders, or you just click distribute, right? And in this case, you change the order, and then click on Save Changes. A fax box, you can decide to have your users have their own fax box. If you decide to do this, I do recommend making use of a phone number. This way, the user can send and receive faxes, right? You do have the option to use a new extension number, right? So essentially, the user has 2 extensions, one for calls and then the other for faxes. However, they will not be able to send a fax out. Right? The system will use the user's fax box information in terms of for caller ID information for sending the fax out. It uses whatever phone number or extension is assigned to the fax box for the caller ID. An extension is not long enough to have for valid outbound caller ID, so the fax will fail. Conference Bridge, when you enable it on a user, the only thing as admin you need to do is create a PIN number for them. And then click on Save Changes. Video conferencing, this is for in-house only, right? So only your Dash user would make use of it, not anyone outside of your organization. Call forwarding, you have off, on, or failover mode. Your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own. They can do that on their user portal, or they can do that from their VoIP phones directly. Now, failover mode is something an admin has to set up, right? And that's just for if the user's VoIP phone becomes unregistered and a call comes into that user at that time, the system will automatically forward the call to the phone number you designate. You just put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then you click on Save Changes. Customize call recording. When you first enable it, it looks like this. right? And you just need to tell the system what kind of calls you want to record, right? Inbound internal, that means a coworker call, right? Coworker Bob called Aaron. Inbound external, customer Mary called Aaron. Outbound internal, Aaron called coworker Bob. Outbound external means Aaron called customer Mary. Now, every account includes some level of data storage as part of your plan price, I believe. The starter plan may not. You might want to double check that. So if you have a high amount of or heavy call volume and you're recording all your calls, you actually might want to talk to our account services team about AWS storage. That allows you to store your calls via AWS. You have to have an AWS account set up, right? And you're just linking your Dash account to AWS to record or to store your call recordings with them. Because at high volumes, it's going to be cheaper with AWS than with us. Music on hold, you can choose to have your users have their own hold music. You just click enable, upload an mp3.wave.ogg file recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. Do not disturb. This means if you click on this and enable it, that means the user is not being offered calls. Right? Calls to them will go to voicemail or they're skipped in groups. Hot desking, if you enable this, this is for VoIP phone users. You set up a hot desk ID, you click on Save Changes, and it's for use within a shared office environment or hybrid scheduling. All right, so Aaron comes in the office on Tuesday. He sits down at desk number 2. He picks up the phone there, hits *11. Right, that turns on hot desking. It asks him for his hot desk ID, and then it will tell him calls will now be sent to this device. Right, so calls for his user will be sent to him. End of his day, picks up the phone, hits *12 to turn off hot desking. Next time he's in the office, sits down at desk number 5, picks up the phone, *11, hot desk ID. Now he's getting calls at that device. Voicemail boxes shows all the voicemail boxes on the account. If there's an entry here under that third column, that means it was the voicemail box created with the user. Up here at the top is you can add a new voicemail box, right? Manually create them, give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. Click on create voicemail box. Once a voicemail box is created, you can come here, click on the little wrench icon. The basic settings, right? This is so you can review it, so that way you can call in and listen to the voicemail messages or change a new greeting. Advanced, first step, greeting media. This is where you would add a media file to that voicemail box. Now, the first field here, the media, that is the normal or standard greeting that you have play for this voicemail box. The temporary is for your out of office or vacation message, right? So if you have something selected in temporary, it will play no matter what you have selected under media, right? The media file won't play again until you turn temporary back to none. Yeah, you can upload your own files, right? .wave, .mp3, .ogg, recorded in mono, under 1 megabyte. Recipients, your user voicemail boxes have one recipient built in, right? The email address used for login. For any voicemail box you create manually, right, you're going to want to make sure to add a recipient, and you do that by clicking here. You click and then you enter the email address. If you need to add multiple, right, you just click add again and you'll have a new row. Once you're done, you would click on save changes. And then you have options. So once a voicemail box has a media file in place and a recipient in place, then you can click on already set up. And down here, you can double check to make sure if you have the attached email enabled and if you want to delete after the email has been sent out. Advanced routing, this is where direct inward system access is. This is a feature that allows you to log in over the phone, right, from like a cell phone or landline, get dial tone again, and then make an outbound call. When you make an outbound call, it's not your cell phone number that shows up as the outbound caller ID, but your main number. Now, this feature is generally speaking not enabled for new accounts when they sign up. This is something you have to talk to our services team about. But once that's handled, they would enable it so it would show up here. You would come here, you would click enable. And what this does is the system creates a PIN number for you. Now, if you leave it just like this, that means you need to add a menu option under your virtual receptionist or under one of your auto attendants to have a menu option that goes to main DISA. We don't recommend that because if someone stumbles upon that menu option by accident, there's that subset of people who will take the request for a PIN number as a challenge, try to find the PIN number, and then they'll hear dial tone, and then they'll start making outbound calls on your account. So what you would want to do is click Edit Settings, and down here, click Add Extension. Now, give your DISA an extension number. Now, I would suggest making it an extension that's not part of your normal sequence, and then click on Save Changes. So now, you call into your main number that goes to your virtual receptionist or one of your auto attendant numbers. When you hear the main greeting play, you enter in the main DISA extension number, which hopefully only you and or your system admins would know. Then you'll be prompted for the PIN number. Then you hear a dial tone, and then you make an outbound call. Right? And again, that main number, the phone number that shows up on that outbound call, right, is the number you set up here. It's not your cell phone or landline. All right. And the reason for all that is, again, to avoid people figuring it out and making outbound calls on your account without you knowing about it. One way you might know about it would be through your call logs. You can see here that the system already had an inbound call, and it was rejected because the Citibank number has been added to my blacklist. You can see going back in the week, so yesterday. And you can see I had some outbound calls made. And I can see it went from this particular device, so soft phone, calling these other phone numbers. I can even go back to this month, right, for the whole month, and see the call history. I can download these as a CSV file. So if you're good with Excel, or actually good with spreadsheets, you can probably get more data and trends out of that than you can through this interface. Custom, this allows you to set your custom date range. This system will allow you to go back up to 1 month, or I mean, sorry, up to 12 months, excuse me. After that, you have to contact our support team so we can escalate it up. Our engineering team can go back up to 18 months. Beyond that, the data is lost. We're not able to. Then we have feature codes. These are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their phone. Right, similar to keyboard shortcuts. This is a document that's on a web page on our support pages. There's also in the support pages a phone commands cheat sheet, 1-page PDF, has some context on how to make use of the feature codes. And that's the dashboard. So next up, we have blacklists. This is an included feature. This allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you are blocking from reaching your system, or thus your staff members. Click on Edit Lists. Click Add to create a new list. Right? Otherwise, you can click on an existing list. Right? You need to give it a name, and then you choose if you're blocking anonymous calls or not. Right? And that just means if the inbound caller is not transmitting proper caller ID information, if you turn this on, that means we're blocking them. They don't get through. Right? Busy tone. If I turn this off, that means the calls will get those calls will be allowed through. Beyond that, click on Add New Number. Put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. And you keep clicking Add until you're done. Once you are done, you then click on Save. Then you click on Back to Settings at the top right. And then you make sure your lists are on the right-hand side under Selected. Right, so you might have to click and drag. And then you click on Update. All right, faxes. Another included feature, this is your fax box manager. You can get to any of your fax boxes to see their fax activity. So here you see I'm on the inbound fax tab. I see, like yesterday, fax came in from this number. Here are the number of pages. I can download the file. I can look at greater details. If I click on it, I can choose to delete the fax. Outbound faxes, again, you can get to any of your fax boxes. You can see the fax history. Usually it's all about 30 days. Again, you see the date and the time, what that fax box came out from, what number it went to, or sorry, the sending number, then receiving number, number of pages. Again, you can download the file and you can click to delete it. If you see a failure here, right, so instead of success, it says fail, that usually means we had a problem communicating with the other phone number or something happened after we connected, right? So we made the initial connection and then something interrupted the fax. Sometimes there's additional details, sometimes there's not. Email to fax logs. This shows you anything here means the system had a problem processing the fax request. So we didn't even reach the other phone number yet. Right, the thumbs down lets you know you have the date or the user, right, email address, who it went from, the date, the time. Click on the little eyeball icon here at the far right. This is what you're looking for, right? The errors, in this case, no valid attachment. That could just mean an attachment wasn't included, right? Someone forgot, or someone tried to attach something other than a PDF or TIFF file. Number manager just takes you back to your spare numbers page. Reports actually opens up a new tab and takes you to reports.virtualpbx.com. This is a plan-specific feature. It allows you to create your own reports. I would recommend, because it doesn't display properly here, go to our YouTube channel under videos and do a search for advanced reporting demo. And that will show you a snapshot, basically, of what you can do with the advanced reporting. And if that's something you want that's not showing up on your account, then you'd want to talk to our account services team. Voicemails get you to your voicemail manager. You can get to any voicemail box on your account. Right, and you can see the voicemails that they have, right? So if someone says their voice, someone's getting a message, voicemail box is full, as an admin, you can come here, you can click in front of it, and you can change its status, or you can move it, right, to a different voicemail box because it's not appropriate for this person. Now, you have the date and the times involved, the duration. You can play it back and download it. ACD queues. ACD stands for automatic call distribution. This is an upgrade feature to existing plans. In some cases, it might be necessary to upgrade plans before you can add queues to it. There are two kinds of queues currently available. The standard ACD queues, which I have here, and then there's also ACD queues Pro. Accounts can have one or the other, not both. So I can only show you the standard queues here. However, on the YouTube channel, do a search for ACD queues Pro demo, and it will show you some of the key differences between the standard queues and Pro. So in terms of creating, oops, that's not what I wanted. That's where you would start to create a queue, but I'm just going to go to an existing queue. It basically shows us everything at once. So you give it a name, you choose whether it's going to have an extension number or a phone number. That's on top of it being a menu option. Right? Then you've got your queue routing strategy. Round robin will equalize out over time. Most idle is whoever's been waiting the longest for a call gets the next call. One thing to keep in mind about that is if someone logs in or someone new logs in, they get sent to the front. Then after they've had that first call, then it's whoever's been waiting the longest. There's least calls, which is the least amount of connected queue calls. And then least offered, which is the least amount of connected or missed calls. You got hold treatment, which is basically you upload a media file, that way .mp3.ogg, recorded in mono. On the queues, you can actually upload, I believe, 5 megabyte files. Queue timeout is how much your inbound callers can wait on hold, measured in seconds. Queue call limit is how many people are allowed to wait on hold. Now, in this case, right, I'm saying 4 people can wait on hold. That's on top of whoever's already speaking to my staff members. If I change that to 0, that means there's no limit to the number of people who can wait on hold. Timeout immediately if empty, if this is enabled. That means if I have no staff members logged in to the queue, and a call comes in, the system will treat that inbound caller as if they've already hit the timeout limit. at 40 seconds. And then have the escalation call flow after timeout. After that 40 seconds, what do I want to do with the call? I have this pull down here, and I can select where to go with. Right? Send it to voicemail, send it to a user, send it to a different queue, send it back to the main menu, to a group, etc. And then we have the zero out call flow, right? So this, if you select something in the pull down, that means you're enabling the ability for the inbound call to press 0 while they wait on hold to leave the queue. Now, this won't tell them that they can do that. That's something you would have to include in your hold music. But then this pull down again, where are you sending it? Voicemail, user, group, another queue, back to the main menu, etc. Agent behavior, agent timeout measured in seconds. I'm sorry, agent recovery time. Let's get the order next step. This is how much time the system waits after an agent has finished a call before the system sends them a second call from the queue. Force away on reject or missed. If this is enabled, that means if an agent misses a call, the system automatically marks them away. Right, then they have to manually mark themselves as ready to take calls again. Agent connect timeout measured in seconds, default is 20 seconds. Queues were originally designed to take calls from VoIP phones or with VoIP phones, right? Because you can answer the call. If necessary, you can transfer out. Or the staff members could transfer calls out. Now, we have introduced the ability to accept queue calls with cell phones or landlines. However, those are endpoints, so they won't be able to transfer. And in that case, you might want to increase the timeout, especially for cell phone users, to at least 30 seconds, possibly as long as 40. So if you're just creating it, you would click on Create Queue, otherwise Save Changes. Once you have your queues created, over here on the left, click on the members icon, right, the person with the headset. When you're just getting set up, you're not going to have anyone on this list. But this is the list of people who can be assigned to the queues. Click on Manage Members. The people on the right are can be in your queues. The people on your left are not yet available to be in your queues. Right? So if you want to put them in the queues, you would just click on their names and then click Add as Members. Right? It will move them over to the right. Right, so you see them there. Then we go back to the queues. So on any queue, you can click on it, especially when there's no one logged in. You have Add Agents. If there's someone logged in, the Add Agents goes down to the bottom left, right? And then you can click and add new staff members to be in this queue. And then Save Changes. Click and drag them over to the right. Now, once you've assigned agents to a queue, you can click on Add Managers, and you can select any of those agents that are part of this queue to be a manager for that queue. Right? You just click and drag them over to the right, and then click on Save Changes, or to the left if you don't want them to be a queue or manager for the queue. So once you have assigned staff members to your queues, right, they'll have this ACD queues option here. They'll no longer have the D&D toggle. When they first start their day, they should click on Begin Session. They should click on the little phone icon here and select one of their devices. Click on the phone icon again, and then click on Mark as Ready. So once they're marked as ready, right, they're logged in to say they're a soft phone app. Now they can take calls from the queue. Right? That's what a little green bar means. Right? If they're on a queue call, right, the bar turns dark blue. If they mark away, it's red. If they're on an external call, so let's say someone called their extension number directly, or they're calling a customer back, the bar will turn yellow. Right? When they go to lunch, or they have to go on a break, right, or a meeting, right, mark themselves away. End of their day, click on End Session. All right, Dynamic Caller ID. This is a plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change your outbound caller ID of your VoIP phones. So I'm going to click Edit on this first one. This one, I just based it off of the area code. So I just called it 408. I selected, actually, this is my new main number. But I selected this 408 number. This pull down, you can select any of your numbers that are on the account. And then you select, in this case, I said, hey, whenever my staff members dial 408, change their outbound caller ID to this 408 number. Right, so it looks like a local phone number. Or, oops, like this one here, instead, I created a feature code. So now I'm basically I have to tell my staff, if you're calling Los Angeles, that's what this is for, dial star 550, then the area code and phone number you're reaching out to. When they do that, the system will automatically change their outbound call ID to this 323 phone number. Right, so it looks like a local call to people I'm calling in Los Angeles. Or, I chose like a Dallas area code, I can use that as well. Monitor is a plan-specific feature as well. This allows you to see the status of your staff members. Right, so if they're on a call, they're blue and their box widens out so you can see more details. Right, you can choose who's available or who's busy. You can also go by devices. Right, so I can see which device they actually have a call on. Over here on the left, for the active inbound calls, right, they each have their own box, so you can see who they're speaking to. And then for parked calls, if you have anyone who's parked, you'd also see the parking spot number. Recording Manager, by default, this will take you to open up a new tab and take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com, which uses your dash login. And then you can see your call recordings. You can listen to them, delete them, etc. If you're making use of AWS, this actually changes the name. I think it's just call recording, and it will take you to your AWS page where you can see your call recordings there. Webhooks is a plan-specific feature. You actually have to talk to our sales team about this, but this allows you to link Dash to other software. This is programming, probably not super advanced compared to what some people do, but beyond what I can do for sure. But basically, you would fill out the form to create the webhook, right? And then there has to be something else that you're linking it to. On our YouTube channel, there's a webinar, Introduction to Zapier, which covers some of this. So I recommend taking a look at that. You can also go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code and samples of what we've linked Dash to, get a better idea. And then lastly, we have the user portal. Every user on your account has access to their own user portal, right? This is where your staff members, by default, can come to their voicemail tab here and see their voicemails, listen to them, download them. They can also mark them for deletion. Call history, your staff members will be able to choose their date range. They can see their individual call history. The fax tab only works with users with their own fax box. Contact list, this is a read-only list, right? But it allows your staff members to see all the other extensions or phone numbers of users, groups, attendance, etc. Conference tab, over here on the right is where your staff members would adjust their moderator and participant PIN numbers, right? They choose if people are coming in muted or deafened, as well as entering exit tones. When they're actually in a conference here on the left, the plus sign allows them to invite other Dash users to their conference. They can lock a conference so other people cannot join, mute everybody, unmute everybody, and the conference call. Also, while in a conference, moderators have their own little boxes, participants have their own little boxes, and moderators can then mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. The settings and devices tab over here on the left, this is where your staff members would enable call forwarding on their own. They just click on the little box here, put +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then they would click on save. That is everything. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. I have seen no questions, and we have run a little bit long today, so I do apologize for that. We'll be back next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. And beyond that, I thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.